Yeah, let's just a couple minutes is fine, and then we can kind of. Who's our?
Maybe like one more minute, and then. I know, it's hard to tell. Seems like people are just getting here, huh? Yeah. I want them to hear you guys. Come, come, whoever you are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter your gender, whom you love, how you speak, or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. You are welcome here whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears. No matter what you've experienced in the past, no matter what awaits you in the future, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God all of the time, some of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. This is a community of open minds, loving hearts, and willing hands. You are welcome here at South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. And good morning. My name is Brenda. My pronouns are she and her. And welcome to everyone who's gathered here and also virtually in our worship together. Our worship team is created with Zach and myself and John Allen, our music director, and Rick and Jordan, who you just heard and will hear more of, and Bob Scarborough with the streaming for virtual, and Kathleen Luck greeted you as you came in, one of our board members. There are a few announcements today. There's a lot happening at South Valley. Today at 12:30, we're having our annual meeting. And so it's a time to hear from the board, find out what's been going on more formally throughout the year, vote on some issues, vote on the next elected board and other positions. Anyone can attend. Members can vote on those things. We are going to join together with First Church and many other churches actually in an interfaith pride service Thursday, June 2nd. It's going to be held at First Baptist Church, 7 o'clock. And that is a long ongoing tradition of many faiths coming together. Being lesbian for a long time, I remember when many faiths did not come together to welcome who I was, and we have come a long way. So it's a beautiful thing to have the Interfaith Pride Service happening Thursday, June 2nd. Our annual church picnic is Sunday, June 12th at Murray Park. We're going to worship out there. Did anybody go last summer when we were worshiping out? Isn't it a great space? It's so great to be out there and worship, and then we'll have our church picnic right there. Sunday, June 12th. And let's all say hi to each other, share the warmth of our community, say hello, greet one another how you wish, and have a moment. Go ahead.
Good morning. Beautiful job.
Good morning. So, why don't, since we're coming back from the hymn and going, why don't you say the words and I'll go like, okay. And then, let's see if John's going to say it. Do you want me to bring folks back, or are you? Opening hymn. Okay.
I've gotten, you know, it's nothing I came up with on my own. Yeah, so we know.
Otherwise, we'll just have social.
Right. Okay, friends, let's sing. We're going to sing 1074, Turn the World Around. I know Reverend Laura was excited for us to start learning this song together. So this is going to be a together learning experience. This song has has quite the road map. So please note where you have these double bar lines with the dots, that means repeat and go back. So this first two lines of singing, we do that 3 times, then we sing the second page, then we do the next 2 pages, here to here, and then we go back to here and sing that twice, and then we sing this part, the whoa, and then we have another little bit where we do this part 3 times, and then we do the end 2 times. So yeah, just clear as mud. Okay. Just want to make sure I'm in the right spot. So we are going to stand up and do our chalice lighting words at the moment. We invite you to keep standing in body, mind, or spirit as we say those words, and of course use our actions if you want. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, for the light of truth, and for the energy of action. Just one, and you can be seated now if you'd like. One thing I just wanted to share very quickly, because I don't think we mentioned it in our early announcements. As you know, Reverend Laura was supposed to lead us in our service today and do our annual question and answer service. For those of you who are members of this church and have been here a while, you may recognize the fact that I am not Reverend Laura. Those of you who are visiting, fun fact. Unfortunately, over the past few days, she's been feeling a little unwell, and this morning tested positive for COVID. She is fine, she's doing well, but out of an abundance of caution, decided not to join us in person today. She will be here for the congregational meeting that's taking place after service today, but she'll be joining digitally for that part of the today's activities. So. And part of the fun of that is that you get to hear a sermon from me that Reverend Laura wrote, and I'll be reading that from her perspective. So, It's going to be sort of a collective exercise of our imagination here. So just channel, believing that I am Reverend Laura and everything should be fine. With that being said, we'll carry on with our service today. We do want to share our land acknowledgement that as we gather this morning, we do so on the ancestral and current homelands of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. As Unitarian Universalists, we acknowledge the complex and violent history that resulted in the stealing of these lands and the cultural and physical genocide perpetrated against its peoples at the hands and policies of white colonial settlers. We commit ourselves to undoing these harms, and we seek to authentically and with honesty engage in the necessary work that will produce justice for those disenfranchised and that promotes healing for the whole of the earth and its peoples. Some people are born where they belong. Their home and family supply all needs. The glow of hearthlight waxes strong, the call of the wider world recedes. And some search long but never find a spot where they can set up base. At last they must become resigned to moving on from place to place. And some again, the lucky few, are urged to leave and to seek out an individual rendezvous with love's whisper or fame's shout. Belonging is a state of mind, tranquility its foremost fruit. Sought by all, but many find, it cannot grow without a root. That's our call to worship from Martin Lowcock. And at this time, I'd like to invite Rob up to do our time for all ages.
I'd like to invite all of our young people and the young at heart, if you wish, to join me up here for our time together this morning. Good morning. Good morning, Josephine. Remind me, what's your sister's name? What's your name? Adelaide. So good to see you both. How are you this morning? All right. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. All right. Wonderful. Yay! Zach gets to jump in all over the service this morning. I love it. I love it. Well, I'm so glad to be with all of you this morning. I'm so glad to see you. And it's so good to be here in church together. And one of the things that I've always loved about church is that it's a place where we can all come together with this special kind of family that we have here. And we tell stories. We tell stories a lot in church. We tell stories about our lives. We tell stories sometimes about the things we believe in. And we share stories about our history. And that's really important because as a church, a part of coming together and being together is kind of having a little bit of a shared history. Now, when I think of reading stories, I'm sure you all read stories sometimes. Sometimes when I read a story, as I'm reading it, sometimes they might be stories that we might talk about here in church. We read a lot of different stories from other religions and faith traditions and poets. And something that I sometimes wonder when I'm reading is I read a story and I think, I wonder if this story is what? Wonder if it's true. Have you ever read a story and wondered, I wonder if this really happened? Sometimes stories are pretty clear about whether it's what they call fiction, right? If it's a made-up story from someone's imagination, or if it's something that really happened, or maybe it's a little bit of both. And so something that I have learned when I read stories is I try to not worry so much about if the story is true or not, but I wonder about, what can I learn from this story? What is this story trying to teach me? And sometimes there are stories about some really unbelievable things that you might think, this could never really be true. This is wonderful, but this could never really be a story that could be my story. And so what I would say to that is to just think about, how does this story that I'm reading make me feel? What kinds of other things does this story make my imagination think about? And to me, That is where we find the real importance of the story. What the story has to say to us. Some of the stories that we read here in the church from some of our sacred texts, we don't worry so much about whether they are real history or whether they're poetry or what. We just think about the ways that they make us feel in our heart. And that's what I think the really important thing about stories are. What are some of you, do you have a favorite story or a favorite book? Do you have one? What's your favorite story? I mean, not yet. You probably read a lot. Do you read a lot of books? Yeah? Yeah. Magic Carpet Race? That sounds like an amazing story. Do you think it's a true story? Yeah? It is not a true story. You know that. Well, how do you feel when you read that story? It seems like you feel excited when you read that story. Yeah. And that's important. Gosh, if you can get that out of a story, and it makes you feel, if words can make you feel excited, that's just such a wonderful thing. So I hope that whenever you read stories, you will think about how they make you feel, about what you can learn from the story, whether it might be literally true or not. Well, thank you for joining me up here today. And if you'd like, well, maybe except for Zach, because he has other duties this morning, but if you'd like to join Grace and I downstairs, she has an activity for us in the social hall. And so you're invited to come down. We're going to go down those stairs at the other end, like when you come in the church. Remember that? All right. Okay, let's go down.
And I should have said, I'm Zach. So he's Reverend Lauren, I'm him. This church and our ministry is supported by what we give. Our time, our talent, our treasures. Many of us give monthly in a pledge, and then we also give on Sunday. And you're going to hear, if you come to the meeting later today, we share, since 2010, we share that Sunday morning offering with another organization in town that we share our values with. And we have given to, I saw the list, didn't count, 30, 40 organizations through all these years that we have supported financially, as well as many times we're volunteering at those same places. So please give what you can, and know that today we're going to be sharing. Who is it with, Zach? It's not in here. One World Kitchen. That sounds awesome. That's who we're sharing with, and I'm sorry I don't have more information about it, but I feel like it's probably something that supports One World. Refugee and immigrant folks trying to start food businesses, that's my guess. And so.
It might be making meals for people who need meals around the world.
Oh, thank you, Chris.
That was last week's speculation, so we got to get this nailed down.
We do. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. And we get to listen again to our music now. Oh, why don't we say those offering words together? We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share the wealth of this community and sing it with our gifts.
Or else the words have little worth. white and black both speak. The true religion gathers up its text. In the beginning was the Word, but I see quietness behind that start, and name it nothing, much less God.
For all that we have received and all that we have found the courage to give, may we be truly thankful. May these gifts be a blessing to South Valley and to One World Kitchen. Oops, sorry. At this time, I'd like to invite everyone here to participate in our sharing of joys and sorrows. Those who are joining us in the virtual community are invited to use the chat box in the Zoom space to share your joys and sorrows as well. For those of you who are gathered here in body, you're invited to approach the altar here in front of us and place a stone in the water. Feel free to pause as you select your stone and gently place it into the water bowl. You're invited to practice this ritual in silence. At the close of the ritual, when all who wish to have added their stone, we will also add a final stone to represent all those joys and sorrows that have been unexpressed but are still held. At this time, those gathered here in body may now begin to process to the table. Please approach via the right aisle and return to your seat via the aisle on the left. As we close, Brenda is actually going to offer 2 stones, one expressing our collective sorrow for the victims of the hate crime yesterday in Buffalo, and one final stone for any joys and sorrows that were deeply held today but unexpressed. And at this time, if you'll join me just in a moment of silent prayer, meditation, or reflection. All right, thank you, everyone. What, at this juncture of our political and social milieu, can we say about the role of religious truth and vision? Given the disastrous legislation moving through many state houses that seek to criminalize parents and physicians for seeking gender-affirming care, to the slew of anti-abortion laws that destroy 50 years of progress in equality for women. Put those together and we have ourselves quite the moral pickle. These are serious moral and ethical quandaries, and the insistence by some that they reflect the totality of religious truth is beyond troubling. The risk to our democratic processes is very real, and as UUs, we will be on the forefront of these struggles. We always have been in such moments. We always have been a voice for a brighter and fuller justice in the world, and we will not fail this time either. As a multi-faith, multi-perspective tradition, we are actually in a fantastic position to model for others how to live in harmony with diverse perspectives and ways of accessing the sacred. The heart of our tradition is pluralism, and that really matters. This morning, I'd like to walk us through one of the primary doors of our faith as a means of exploring what pluralism looks like and feels like in our tradition, the humanist door. And again, this is Reverend Laura. During my internship in 2017, I served a primarily humanist congregation under the supervision of an atheist minister. I myself am a theist who loves to preach from the Bible. While initially there were a few raised eyebrows when I announced my theism and a persistent rumor that I was from the East Coast, which somehow was used to explain my theism, we quite quickly found our way. There needed be no conflict between my theism and my supervisor's atheism because we shared a common set of values and a common set of principles. We were both committed to the same faith house. We just entered it through different doors. Same house, different doors. Humanism is a core part of our UU tradition and a path forged bravely by many of you for decades and against great resistance, long before it was popular to be an atheist or an agnostic or simply just a seeker. Some of those decades were indeed fully lived prior to my being born. So I take us on this journey today with deep care and respect for the courage it has taken to create and sustain a space for a religious community that is openly affirming of humanist theologies. We don't often speak of salvation in our worship, but I would advocate that humanist theologies are every bit as salvific as a traditional Christian doctrine. And indeed, humanist theologies often act as an important and necessary hedge against those who insist that there is but one way to kneel and kiss the ground, as Rumi once wrote. So yes, I affirm and promote humanism as salvific, a tradition that saves lives that otherwise were in danger of being drowned out. To illustrate this point, let me share a very short wisdom tale from the collection of Anthony de Mello in his book, The Song of the Bird. Monkey salvation for a fish. "What on earth are you doing?" said I to the monkey when I saw him lift a fish from the water and place it on a tree. "I'm saving it from drowning," was the reply. The sun that gives light to the eagle blinds the owl. For many centuries now, the atheists, the humanists, the spiritual but not religious have been the fish plucked from the water by overzealous evangelical Christians seeking to save those they deemed in danger of drowning because what saved them had been so powerful and life-altering, they forgot that which saves the monkey is certain death for the fish. Or, to put it less metaphorically, they imagined and assumed that what saved them must, by definition, save everyone else. They forgot that what is salvific for one heart may be poisonous for another. They forgot that the act of caring for one another requires first that we see the other as they are, as an end in and of themselves, full of worth, dignity, and vested with the same capacity for self-determination as the saved Christian understands themselves to be. They forgot, and in that forgetfulness, Christians have caused much suffering and pain to their fellow human beings and to the planet at large. During these many centuries, a brave few souls have stood up and claimed their rightful space to find and walk a different path. And we, owe them a debt of gratitude. For they forged a path and built beloved community against great odds and greater resistance, enduring pariah status both publicly and privately, long before it was popular to be a secular humanist, and before we had words to describe our communities as simultaneously religious and non-theistic. The first Humanist Manifesto of 1933 was a bold statement about the necessity for human beings to take charge of their lives and act responsibly and collectively to alleviate human suffering, not because it was what God wants from us, but because we deem it good in and of ourselves and for ourselves. It called us to affirm rationality, scientific inquiry, and our own human ingenuity in the building of a great society. In many ways, it was a breath of fresh air to curious, independent-minded folks who found the theology preached in their pews to be less than adequate for the challenges they faced personally and collectively. These first religious humanists found safe harbor in liberal Unitarian churches which had a long tradition of pushing those theological limits. However, like all nascent theologies, the first version had its limitations as well. Its writers were almost exclusively white, male, and educated, and as such it reflected their time and place in our history. By the 1970s, these limitations had been identified by Black liberation and feminist theologians, scholars, and social justice advocates. A new version was published that sought to address these concerns, and the writers, many of them still with us in our UU movement, did so with great care and courage. And now, in the ensuing 40-plus years between that version and today, my lifetime, in fact, our culture has continued to shift and change, and our humanism has had to do the same. It has, however, not been an easy road, for the shift has arrived unto the shores of a hard-won humanism is a generation of UUs who are hungry for a spiritual warmth that has too often been lacking in our traditional UU humanist circles. This desire for warmth, which often shows up as a deep yearning for connection with the divine, can seem overly close to the evangelical fervor that drove many UUs out of traditional theistic communities in the first place. This has caused tension in our pews and across our movement because we've often lacked the language to deal with this yearning. And yet we keep seeking, because that is what we do as UUs when we are at our best. We face our fears, wade in deep, and seek new insights and answers. Theodore Parker identified this trend well in his sermon entitled "The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity" back in 1841. And while Parker was speaking of the need for Unitarian communities that were still then very much part of the liberal Christian fold to let go of the doctrines that no longer served them and to continually seek new understandings of Scripture, his insights about the human desire to hold on tightly to what is known and the importance of letting go is as true today for our movement as it was then. We must always, as a movement, guard against our very human tendency to draw lines around our communities and say who is in and who is out. UU minister and former president and academic dean of Medville Lombard Theological School, William R. Murray, heard Parker's call to boldly face this tendency to become conservative in our traditions and recently produced a phenomenal book that squarely faces the problems of former iterations of our UU humanist theologies and attempts, quite successfully, to outline a new, warm-hearted humanism that just might be the saving force our movement and our new seekers need in order to build the next generation of UU communities. Murray identifies that our current UU communities seem to be comprised of two primary groups of people: religious humanists and religious naturalists. Religious humanists reject the supernatural in favor of a wholly natural universe that exults in being alive in the beautiful universe. It is a non-creedal theology that emphasizes reason, compassion, community, nature, and social responsibility. Religious naturalists also find religious meaning in the natural world and are generally dismissive also of a supernatural deity, preferring instead to understand the divine spirit as wholly part of nature. They also adhere to many of the same values as the religious humanist in their quest for a justice-filled world. The primary difference between the two is that the religious humanist rejects God on moral, ethical, and rational grounds, while the religious naturalist embraces God, divine, sacred, for those same reasons. The difference is in orientation to the world, and the trouble is that we often don't know how to talk about these differences in life-affirming and life-giving ways to one another. But it is critical that we learn to do so, for the world needs us as much as ever. William Murray has identified a middle path that he hopes will give religious humanism the new life that it needs to engage the younger generations of seekers who find their way into our sanctuaries and get them to stay here for the long term. He advocates for a warm-hearted humanism that maintains its emphasis on science, reason, justice, and community, but also adds to it a deeper spiritual language of wonder, joy, compassion, and most importantly, a strong and consistent commitment to liberation that too often has been lacking in traditional humanist theologies. He calls our movement to embrace humanistic religious naturalism, a stance that celebrates the best of human life, but locates nature at the center rather than simply the rational man. A stance that boldly calls us to be more open to mystery and more committed to justice than ever before, because truly we are the ones we have been waiting for, and it's up to us to make the decisions and take the necessary actions in service of a justice-rich world in which all may be free. And liberation is truly the core of all good theology. For it has been said by many voices over many millennia that we are judged by the least among us. Humanistic religious naturalism is a pathway that just might be the opening we have been praying for these many millennia, a saving force that calls us to attend to the least of us in service of the liberation of us all. And if so, what poetic justice it is that our prayers are best answered by a godless tradition that honors every human heart and every living creature we share this beautiful universe with. At this time, we'd like to invite you all to please stand as you're willing, in body, mind, or spirit, to join us as we extinguish our chalice. The words, if you're not familiar with them, are in your order of service, and you're invited to say them out loud with me. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, nor the energy of action. We hold each other in our hearts until we meet again.
If you'd like to stay standing, we'll sing 1064.
Thank you, everyone. May the light of love shine upon you, out from within you, be gracious unto you, and bring you peace. For this is the day we are given. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Please be seated now for the postlude, and feel free to join us for our social hour downstairs.
I have often dreamed of a far-off place where a hero's welcome would be waiting for me, where the crowds will cheer when they see my face, and a voice keeps saying, "This is where I'm meant to be. I'll be there someday. I can go the distance. I will find my way. If I can be strong, I know every mile will be worth my while. When I go the distance, I'll be right I go the distance and my journey is complete. Oh yeah. But to look beyond the glory is the hardest part, for a hero's strength is measured by his heart. Like a shooting star, I will go the distance. I will search the world. I will face its harms. I don't care how far. I can go the distance till I find my hero's welcome waiting in your arms. I will search the world, I will face its harms, till I find my